Algae basics. Let's look at what algae are and how they do what they do in a basic sort of way. Algae. Algae are basically photosynthetic, undifferentiated organisms that live in aquatic or marine environments. Photosynthetic, so they give us the root of plants. They are undifferentiated, which means they're there. They don't have a lot of organization or structure to them. They're rather simple. And they live in aquatic, which is freshwater, or marine, which is saltwater environments. This is a green algae, very common thing in freshwater. We call this one Spirogyra. This is a green algae in mass growing in freshwater. This is a green algae, and you can see it's kind of a colony sort of thing, but it's not really very differentiated. And you can see the little chloroplasts on the inside of it. This is a type of kelp that grows off of the New Jersey coast. And what you can see is these little bladders that help keep it floating. And the rest of it is rather simple. There's not a whole lot of structure to it. This is a giant kelp growing underwater. This is often used in fish tanks. And this is in salt water. And you can see the size of the leaf blades and the fronds on them. When we look at the body parts of an algae, this is a picture of a kelp growing off of a rock. It says we've got what we call the holdfast. And the holdfast, by definition, is the root-like part of an algae's thallus that anchors it to a substrate. A thallus just is a term for body. So when you look at it, it says you're going to have a holdfast, and that's what these things are, holding onto that rock. They're holding it fast onto the rock. We have what we call a stipe. And a stipe is a stem or a stalk, especially the stem of a seaweed or a fungus or the stalk of a fern frond. So what you see is this little undifferentiated part coming out, and here we've got two of them, and you can see we call this the stipe. It's that part coming out. If you've ever seen a mushroom, that little stalk-like thing that comes up and holds it up is a stipe. And then we've got the leaf blade, and the blade is a leaf-like structure, and that's the blade of the algae. We also have diatoms, and diatoms are any of a various single-celled algae that have a silica-based shell made of two complementary parts. Think of these. These are kind of like two plates that come together one on top of each other. This is a picture, and it's a phenomenal picture of diatoms. Look at all the different shapes and sizes, and these are basically looking at them from the top, and you can see a lot of variety and other things in there. It's absolutely gorgeous. And these are like two little shells, one on top of each other, that make up this type of organism. And this is all made up of silica, which basically is your precursor of glass. We have plankton, and plankton is a generic term that says microscopic to small organisms that live in an aquatic or marine environment and that serve as the basis of the food chain. So it's out of the plankton that things eat. Something eats the plankton, then something eats the thing that eats the plankton, then something eats the thing that eats the thing that eats the plankton, and so on, and we get our food chain out of this. So these are the very rudimentary organisms that form the food for the basis of the food chain. If they are photosynthetic, we call them phytoplankton, and that would be a phytoplankton, and you can see that it's green in color. If it is movable, then we call it zooplankton. And this little, almost looks like a shrimp-like thing, but it's really very tiny. It's actually microscopic, is a type of zooplankton. And there are a lot of different types of zooplankton that we can have out there. And if this got to be much bigger, then it'd turn into a shrimp, and then we'd have a jumbo shrimp, and then we'd get a lobster, and they're all very similar in there. So plankton serve as the basis of the food chain. One of the things about humans is humans that live by the sea tend to be a little bit more healthy than people who don't, because living by the sea and eating seafood and things like algae gives you a certain amount of iodine in your diet, and iodine becomes very important because it combats a condition that we call goiter. And goiter is an abnormal enlargement of the thyroid gland caused by a deficiency of iodine in the diet. So if you eat seafood and you eat things like that, you don't have goiter. If you don't eat sufficient amount of iodine in your diet, which isn't very much, but it's still got to be there. If you don't have enough of it, you will develop goiter. Now, in this particular case, you see this, and this is an abnormal enlargement of the thyroid, and this is really gross looking. What can you do for it at this point? Not much. But had this person consumed fish and seafood products during their lifetime, this would not have occurred. So what we do nowadays is we put iodine in the salt, and we call that iodized salt, and that is to prevent a condition like this. So when we look at algae, a lot of very important things that we look at, and all of these become very, very interesting for us when we deal with some algae. Some algae produce toxins, and a toxin is a specific chemical product of microbes, plants, and some animals that are poisonous to other ones. With algae, some of them are responsible for fish kills, and some of them are responsible for human poisoning. When we talk about toxins related to algae, one of the ones we talk about is red tide. This particular photo from NOAA shows you what red tide looks like. And this is nothing more than an accumulation of gazillions of microscopic organisms, and they produce a toxin, which means if you swim in this or fish swim in this, you will get sick. Among algae, there's a lot of different things, and these are kind of the basic concepts that we want to get understood with algae.